God's house tonight. It's good to be able to come midweek to get our cups refilled, to get our selves recharged, I guess you could say. Just being in God's house. It's good to be on Sunday morning and Sunday night, but through the week as we begin to go through the struggles of everyday life, we need something to help us remind us who really is in control and in charge of things. But we'll be in the second book of Samuel tonight. We finished up 1 Samuel last week, and to kind of just give you a quick recap, I won't cover everything, but 1 Samuel, Samuel is actually the last judge of the period of judges and the first prophet. Samuel was born to Hannah, and Hannah was not able to have children. And the other wives made fun of her. And so she went and she prayed to God, and she said, "If you will give me a child, then I'll give him back to you." And she prayed so hard and so earnestly that they actually thought she was drunk. And she said, "I'm not drunk, I'm just praying." And so God blessed her with Samuel, and as she weaned Samuel, she did exactly what she promised. She gave him back to God. She took him to the temple, where he would study under Eli, who was a priest, and not a very good one at that. He really did not have much control. His sons were a part of the ministry there, or the priesthood, I guess you could say. But they were not godly people, and they were doing ungodly things, as such as they would bring in prostitutes, and they would do things that they shouldn't be doing as godly people. But instead of Eli taking control and saying, "Hey, you need to stop this or something's going to have to change," or "You got to go." But he wouldn't do that. He would always kind of just turn a blind eye to it. And so the people have come to Samuel. Eli has died. The people have come to Samuel. They have told Samuel, "You're old. You're getting older now. We need somebody to lead us. We need a king." And Samuel kind of got offended about that, but he went to God with it, and God said, "Give them what they want." He said, "And don't think another minute about it, because it's not you that they've turned on. It is I." He said, "And rather than wanting me to be their king, wanting to worship me and follow me as their leader, they would rather do what the world is doing and have an earthly leader." Thus comes Saul. Saul literally was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And he was the wrong person. You see, Saul was a Benjaminite. The king of Israel is supposed to be from the tribe of Judah. If they had just waited 10 more years, then they would have had David. But instead, they rushed it, as we as people tend to do. We don't wait on God's time, we do it our own selves, and then we make a big old mess out of it. So they brought Saul in as their king, and Saul started out with good intentions. He started out humble. He said, "Why me? I am from the smallest tribe, and I am from the smallest family in the smallest tribe. Why me?" And he started out humble, but he began to quickly become a different person. Saul was one of these people that he could not stand to be outdone. He could not stand for anybody in his presence to do better than him, including his own son Jonathan. His own son would go and win many battles, And Samuel would take the credit for it as he sat under the tree and watched it. Well, they were told before they went into battle, Samuel said, "Let me come and make a sacrifice." Well, he didn't show up in the time that Saul thought he should have, so Saul decides, "I'll just do the sacrifice of my own self," which puts Saul in a place that he shouldn't have been, because a king and a priest are not supposed to be the same people. You see, the priests come from different tribes. And that's the way God had ordained it. But they go into battle, and things begin to happen. And so, on comes the scene here. You see little David. God tells Samuel, He says, "Go to the house of Jesse," who is David's father. He says, "Go to the house of Jesse. I'm telling you, this is who I want. We got to get him in the castle." God has a plan for everything, right? So David is brought in as an apprentice, I guess you could say, an intern. And then, of course, we know what David does. He slays Goliath. And Saul tries to kill David. For 14 years he tries to kill David. And for 14 years David is on the run, hiding out in places, in caves, fear for his life. And then finally in his old age, Saul says, "I've sinned, go get David. I'm not going to bother him anymore." And so Saul dies, and that will lead us up into the end of 1 Samuel. Saul is now dead. Now starting into 2 Samuel, I want you to look at 3 words tonight. We're only going to look at one of these words, but there's 3 words that will basically sum up this whole book: triumph, transgression, and trouble. Now, if you take all 3 of those words and you add another word to it, then you're going to see it's David's triumphs, David's transgressions, and David's troubles. This is something that is important, but it's more of for a knowledge aspect. But David, out of 62 chapters in the Bible, or I should say there are 62 chapters in the Bible that are devoted to David. His name is mentioned in 1,118 verses in the Bible. He's mentioned more often than any other person except one. And I dare say everybody would know who that other person is, and that is the Lord Jesus Christ. So David was a pretty important figure in the Bible. He had 62 chapters devoted to him. Abraham had 14. Joseph had 14. Jacob had 11. Elijah had less than 10. So in all those names, David had 62. It's very important. David was once a shepherd, a lowly shepherd in a field. And then he became servant to the king as he became servant to Saul. And then he became sovereign to the nation of Israel, which means he became the supreme ruler. Then he became king of Israel, and he would become Israel's second king. As I say, Saul is dead now, so starting off here in the first chapter of 2 Samuel, most of Saul's sons were killed except for a few. There was a couple that were not. Actually, there was 3 of them that were not. And so, starting here in verse 1, a messenger has gone into David's camp to give David the news that King Saul is dead. He committed suicide, by the way. And so when David heard the news, he felt sorrow for Saul, even though Saul had hunted him down like a dog and wanted to kill him for over 14 years. David didn't jump around and say, "Woo, he's gone, it's my turn now." No, he felt sorrow for Saul. He felt sorrow for Jonathan. At one point in time, David and Jonathan were best friends. And so what that does is that marks the greatness of David. He didn't seek revenge. He didn't rejoice seeing Saul dead and saying, "This is the greatest day of my life." No. He felt sorrow. He showed compassion. He showed the same thing that Jesus Christ would do, as Jesus would weep over the very city that would crucify him many years later. Jesus said one of the hardest things in the Bible that there is to do. That's to love your enemies. It looks really good on paper, doesn't it? You know how your boss man comes there with a big good idea. Looks really good on paper until you start trying to put all the pieces together. But Jesus said, love your enemies. And it's hard to love people when they don't love you. It's hard to love people when they've hated you their whole life. It's hard to feel sorrow and compassion for those people. But that's what David felt towards Saul and towards Jonathan. It may have somewhat showed some maturity in David. It could also show that he was really growing in Christ. And if you and I are capable of that same act, then that shows that we are growing in Christ. And we love our enemies. Verse 25 of chapter 1 says, "How are the mighty fallen in the midst of the battle? O Jonathan, thou wast slain in thy high places." They were friends. Now, if you remember, David actually won Jonathan's sister. She was actually given to him. Saul had a master plan that he would use her to get to destroy David. So that relationship wasn't good there to begin with. It really wasn't a relationship built on love. You know, when somebody just says, "Here you go, here's your new wife." Verse 26 says, "I am distressed for thee, my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant hast thou been unto me. Thy love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women." People would look at that and say, "Well, does David have some tendencies towards Jonathan?" No, he doesn't. What he was saying is that brotherhood they had, that bond they had, was stronger than any woman. You see, Jonathan was very upset about David and his sister being married. He didn't like that. He didn't like that very well at all. And so as we go on, David, he goes to be coronated the king of the nation. But at first he's only coronated as king of Judah. Now, if you remember, Israel is separated into two parts. Judah is in the south. And so he is coronated the king of Judah. Chapter 2 verse 4 says, And the men of Judah came, and they were anointed David king over the house of Judah. And they told David, saying that the men of Jabesh Gilead were they that buried Saul. So David has been anointed or coronated as king of Judah. David actually has 3 anointings in the Bible. People say, "Wait a minute, I've read the Bible, there's only 2. Well, yeah, there's actually 3. His first coronation was the day that he was almost overlooked by his own father. You see, when Samuel went to Jesse's house, he left David in the fields because he didn't even think David would be worthy enough to be a king. So he left him in the fields. And Samuel went to him and poured the horn of oil over David and anointed him the next king. You see, David knew that he was going to be the next king when he even went into the palace with Saul, but he never threw it up in Saul's face. He never said, once you croak, old man, I'm going to be the man in charge. He never said that. He never portrayed that. He never acted that. He just went along as normal. But here is his first public coronation as he is crowned king of Judah. And then he'll have a third as he's ordained and crowned king over all of Israel. So he's in Hebron, which is, again, in the southern part of the kingdom. You remember, Judah is south. And you have the northern part. So Judah recognizes his as king, but the rest of Israel doesn't just yet. Saul has died, and I mentioned that 3 of his sons died with him, but not all of them had died. There was one by the name of Ishbosheth who is still alive. And then there's another one by the name of Abner. So we're not going to spend a lot of time looking at Abner, or Joab, but those are 2 names in the book that you'll see with conflict involved. Joab was the commander-in-chief's David's army. Abner was the commander of Saul's army. And so Saul is dead. Abner doesn't want to lose his job, obviously. He doesn't want to be unemployed, so to speak. So he takes somebody from the house of Saul, which is Ishbosheth, and says, you're the next king. You know, you're the son of Saul. By right, you should be the king. Well, that's not true because God had chose David to be the king. He chose David. So now the conflict begins. And in a sense, what you'll see is really the first civil war in Israel. Between David in the south and Ishbosheth in the north. And that sounds really familiar, doesn't it? But as you get over to chapter 3, in verse 1 it says, now there was long war between the house of Saul and the house of David. But David waxed stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul waxed weaker and weaker. Well, why do you think that is? Because obviously, God chose David. So David's going to grow stronger. His enemy will grow weaker. So Abner, he says, man, this ain't working out. I see what's coming here. It ain't going to end good for either one of us. So he tries to negotiate peace with David to literally just hand the rest of Israel over to him. So after 7 years of being king in Judah, David unites Israel. He unites the north and the south. And then he is king of all of Israel. Not just Judah, but all of Israel. Chapter 5, verse 1 says, then came all the tribes of Israel to David unto Hebron, and spake, saying, behold, we are thy bone and thy flesh. We're as one. You are our king. You led Israel out. You brought Israel together. And we are just like your flesh and your bone. So it's public knowledge now that at one point in time Samuel went to the house of Jesse and he chose David, a man after God's own heart, to lead the people, to shepherd the people. Verse 3 says, so all the elders of Israel came to the king of Hebron, and King David made a league with them in Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king of Israel. So that would be his third anointing in all reality. They don't really reflect on the first time that Samuel met David as an anointing, but it's worth pointing out. Now David's 30 years old. You think about that. He's young. He's really young. Our youngest president was Roosevelt. He was 42. And then John F. Kennedy was the next. He was 43. And that is considered young for a president of the United States. Because most of the presidents that I've known are either in their late 50s, 60s, and some even up in their 70s. But David was young. He reigned for 40 years. And so what David had to do now is, what would any good king do? He's got to secure a capital for it, right? He's got to secure his people, right? So he wants Jerusalem to be the capital. You know, there are still arguments today. And President Trump has come out and said that he recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. But there's still arguments over that today. But David wanted Jerusalem to be the capital. And guess what? Who else wanted Jerusalem to be the center of that? God! Coincidence? I don't think so. God always promised that He was going to have a special place, and that He would make that place the banner place to issue forth His great name. That city is Jerusalem. But here's the thing. Here, Jerusalem isn't called Jerusalem in 2 Samuel. It's called Jebus. It's called Jebus because it's overrun by a group of Jebusites. Put a lot of thought into that name, right? But the Jebusites had a strong hold. And guess what? Here it goes back to, if you do what God tells you to do, you won't have these problems. When they entered into the promised land, God told them to do what? Destroy all the people there. Well, they didn't. The Jebusites were one of the Canaanite tribes left over from the days when Joshua entered into the promised land. Well, guess what? When you don't do what God tells you, it's going to come back to bite you in the rear end, sooner or later. But why choose this place? Why? Because it's strategically located. It's strategically located for a couple of reasons. If you're looking for a center base, what are you going to do? You're going to pick the place that is the best fit for you all the way around. And so, one of the reasons is it's on a hill. Well, obviously, if you are on a hill, then you have what? You have the ability to see all of your surroundings. Also, if you're on a hill, then guess what? There are valleys below you. So it makes it easy for you because you're able to look down on your enemy, but your enemy has to look up to you. And then they have to climb up to you. So this is the reason why David wanted it to be there. And so they wanted to put a wall around it. Why? Because that's what you do when you want to protect your city. You put a wall around it. And then, not only that, there was a great water source there. There was a great water source there. It was called the Gihon Spring. And later, King Hezekiah would actually build a tunnel that would bring the water from the outside of the wall to the inside of the wall. So, another thing that is interesting is you could actually walk the tunnel that Hezekiah built, and it will drop you off exactly in the pool of Siloam. And we all remember that story when Jesus healed the blind man. We all remember the story when He told the man to go into the water and wash himself. But chapter 5 verse 6 says, And the king and his men went to Jerusalem unto the Jebusites and inhabitants of the land, which spake unto David, saying, Except thou take away the blind and the lame, thou shalt not come in hither. Thinking David cannot come in hither. Well, okay. He says, you're not going to come in here unless you take the blind and the lame. But David took the stronghold of Zion and he took Jerusalem. There are a couple of scriptural texts that speak of David overtaking Jerusalem. One is in 2 Samuel. The other one's in 1 Chronicles. So David is now building his capital, his king. But I want you to understand, when the Jebusites said, except you take away the blind and the lame, this is how prideful they were. They were in such natural fortification, they felt like they were so protected that nobody could touch them. And so David says to his men, listen, whoever can figure out how to get up to the city through the water shaft, I'm going to make you my commander-in-chief. So if you're smart enough to figure it out, then you're smart enough to lead my armies. So Joab scurried up the water shaft and made an entrance into the city. And guess what he did? He opened up the gate. What happens when the gate opens? Everybody can just come on in. It's like opening the front door. Now, if David had not been chosen by God, do you think things would have been as easy for him as they were? Absolutely not. But now what we see is here in chapter 6, we have the case of doing the right thing. So David has now taken Jerusalem. So what's he want to do? He wants to bring the Ark of the Covenant back. Because if you remember in chapter 1, the Philistines, they stole it. They stole the Ark of the Covenant. So what does David want to do? He wants to do the right thing. He wants to bring it back. But here in this case of doing the right thing, the wrong way is not always the way to go. It's definitely not the way to go, especially if you're going against the Lord's way. If you're going against the way the Lord wants things done. So in chapter 6, they are beginning to get the Ark of the Covenant back. I see, in David's mind, it was, I've got to go. I'm going to get this there. Now, David being goal-oriented, he probably did put a lot of thought in following directions that were given by God. He was probably more driven of, I'm going to accomplish this goal. Not, I'm going to accomplish this goal with God's help in the way that God wanted me to do it. But that's what happens when you get a bunch of protagonists. Or hard-headed people in simple terms. I had to look up what that word meant because I'm a simpleton. But it describes me 100% hard-headed. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it this way, and ain't nobody going to stop me. We're all like that, right? Why did they look at you for, Brandon? But it doesn't always work that way. You know, sometimes you got to stop and read the fine print. Sometimes you got to read the instructions before you throw it out in the trash. And God had revealed how things were supposed to be done when it comes to moving the Ark of the Covenant. See, that's the thing. God gives specific directions on everything that He does. He gives you specific directions on how everything is supposed to be done. Why? Because if we listen to His directions, then we won't mess it up. You know, it's like your teacher giving you 2 crayons. A blue one and a red one. And anywhere you see the number 1, you color blue, and anywhere you see the number 2, you color red. Well, if you do what your teacher tells you, then you're going to have the picture the way it's supposed to be. But if you color number 1s with blue and number 2s and reds, then you've messed it completely up because that's not what you were told to do. Yeah, you have a finished product, but it's not the finished product you're supposed to have. So here's the problem. The Ark of the Covenant has not been in a tabernacle for over 40 years. The Philistines had stolen it. And for over 40 years, it had literally been in Obed-Edom's backyard. For 40 years. So David wants to bring it back, and in verse 3 it says, "And they set the ark of God upon a new cart, and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, that is Gabah, and Uzzah, and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, drave the new cart." So they get this bright idea. We're going to put the Ark of the Covenant on a cart. We're going to roll it. That's not how God intended it for it to be. So they put it on a cart with wheels. Smart idea, right? Bring it up to Jerusalem. Well, several miles away, there was a hill. And as they began to drive the cart, the oxen stumbled, and the ark began to shake. And then poor Uzzah, he does what? He reaches up to keep it from falling, and he touches it, and God struck him dead. God struck him dead. He died right there by the Ark of the Covenant. Now all he did was put his hand out to steady the ark so it wouldn't fall down, it wouldn't break into pieces. That seems like a practical idea, right? It seems like the smart thing to do. The smart thing to do would have been to carry it the way God intended for it to be carried. You see, the Ark of the Covenant just isn't another box. It's not your toy box. It's not a storage box. It's not a thing that you take home and my wife is bad about this. Every blanket that she's ever been given, she keeps it in a box. Never uses it. But it's not one of those things that you just put away and forget about. It's something very holy. And God has prescribed a way for it to be carried. There were 4 ringlets in the bottom of the ark. And then there were 2 poles that would go through the 2 ringlets on this side and the 2 ringlets on this side. And then they were supposed to be carried on the shoulders. Now you remember when I said that God chooses specific tribes to do specific things? Just as the king was supposed to come from the tribe of Judah, only the people from the tribe of Levi are to carry it. And only a specific family from the tribe of Levi, the Kohathites, they were the only ones that could pick it up and transport it. You see, God gives specific directions. It has to be from the tribe of Levi, and it's got to be these people that do it. And then what they would do is they would carry it on their shoulders. So you would think, well, the cart idea was such a great idea. Much easier than manhandling it, carrying it on your shoulders and walking with it. You're going to get tired. But God has specific plans for specific reasons, and sometimes you have to put the effort for God. You can't just say, okay, God, I want to give my life to you, but what I want to do is I want to take a shortcut here. I want to take a few things out, and then everything will be good. God is not, He doesn't negotiate. It's His way or the highway, so to speak. And so, David, he had a sincere heart. He really just wanted to get it to Jerusalem. But sometimes just being sincere isn't all that matters to God. Are you going to follow the way that He commanded you to do? Are you going to do the things that He's asked you to do? God made a revelation. He said, do it this way. They said, well, we're going to change it up and do it this way. Be a little bit easier for us. Didn't work out too good for them. Because now they got to take the ark off the cart, and they got a dead man. You see, Sarah and Abraham had the same idea. Sarah says, I'm old, I can't have a baby, so you go get Hagar and we'll just call it a day. No, that's not how it works. Because God told Abraham, He made a covenant with him. And so Sarah became pregnant and Isaac was born. You see, when we try to do things our way, we mess things up. Chapter 7 brings us to one of the most important chapters in the Bible, because what it does is it gives us the covenant between God and David. He says, and thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever. What's he talking about? Well, if you read chapter 7 of Samuel, that covenant is made. And what does it do? It literally starts genealogy of Jesus Christ. What do we see here? We see God's blending two things. He's got in mind two different things. Something that will happen now, and then something that will happen later. You see, David wanted to build a temple for the ark. He said, I'm living in this fine house, and the temple is kept out in a tent. I need to build something beautiful for God. Well, here's the thing. God doesn't always need beautiful to make things work. But now we'll see later on that Solomon will actually build the temple. And we're going to see David's dynasty here. As it begins, they're going to be in 586 BC, they will be taken captive by the Babylonians. And God curses the line of David and the line of Solomon. When Jeconiah, a king that is so wicked that God says he will have no descendants on the throne anymore after this line of David through Solomon. The royal line was cursed. You'll find that in the book of Jeremiah when we get to it. But he just said that thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee, thy throne shall be established forever. You think, well, wait a minute. Did God just break his promise? Nope. You see, if you look at the book of Luke, and then you look at the book of, I want to believe it's Matthew, it could be Mark, but don't hold me to that. Those names kind of joggle in my brain. But I'm 99% sure it's Matthew. But if you look in the book of Matthew and you look in the book of Luke, you see the genealogy of Jesus Christ is recorded in two different branches, so to speak. On one branch you have Joseph, who is from Solomon's side of the family. And so that's cursed. And then you have Mary that goes all the way back to David. But not through Solomon, through David's other son, Nathan. Don't confuse Nathan with the prophet Nathan. He's not the prophet. But Mary goes all the way back to David through the son of Nathan. His lineage wasn't cursed. God still kept his promise. God's always got a solution to the problem. Well, Joseph's side is cursed, but wait a minute. Joseph's not Jesus' real father anyway, right? He's just his stepfather. So Joseph had nothing to do with the birth of Jesus Christ, so technically he couldn't be in the lineage of David from Joseph's side because Joseph is technically of no relation to him through blood. So guess what? There's only one way to get around that curse. What do? You have a young virgin deliver the Son of God. And guess what? By doing that, she is his blood mother. She is of David's lineage. And the kingdom, as promised, will be forever. If you look at the first 10 chapters, and this study goes really, really quick, and I try to be as forthcoming with knowledge and tidbits of the books. But if you look at the first 10 chapters, if you remember I said we're going to look at David's triumphs today. What did he do? Well, first of all, he unified a nation. He unified a nation that was at war with each other. That seems a hard thing to fathom nowadays when our leaders, who we put into place, they can't unify anything because they're too busy fighting amongst themselves. But I believe that David truly had a desire to bring Israel together. He unified a nation. What else did he do? He secured the capital. He secured a place to where they could protect themselves. That's what a good leader does, right? First of all, he brings all the people together, and then he makes sure that they're secure so that nobody from the outside can attack them. So he secures the capital. Guess what? David's never one time defeated in a battle. He's triumphant in them all. All the way back. If you think about little David, he was on the battlefield with his sling and his stones. And he slew a giant with one swift stone. Now mind you, that stone was guided by the hand of God. David never lost a battle. What else did he do? What else can be a triumph for David? He expanded a nation from 6,000 square miles to 60,000 square miles. There was prosperity everywhere. Everywhere. You could literally say, I guess in today's time, if we reflected back to that and we were in their time of prosperity, everybody would have had a chicken in the pot to make some pie out of. And everybody would have had a car in the garage that they could get in and drive. Triumph. He brought the nation together. He secured a place for them. He never was defeated. He expanded. Everybody was living good. But after about 20 years, he peaks. And he begins to start going downhill. So as we will pick up in chapter 11 next week, we are going to see the transgressions. We all know the story of David. We all know what David done. We all know what happened and where he went wrong. You see, I want you to look at things. I want you to look at it from this perspective before we go into the transgressions. David was on top of the hill. What happens when you're on top of the hill? A lot of times you forget who got you to that top. And that's what David did. What happens when you do that? You ain't but one place to go. That's the end. Father God, as we come to you tonight, Lord, I just thank you for the privilege to once again be in your house, God. Lord, I just pray, God, that tonight this study would have been helpful for people to understand just a little bit better about your word, God. Lord, because we all learn every day, God, and as long as we're learning, then we're growing, God. And that means that we have not come stale in your mind, or you have not come stale in our minds. Lord, I just thank you for the privilege to be here to teach tonight, God. I just give you the praise, the honor, and the glory. I pray that you'll go with us till our next appointed time, God, and that you would just keep us all hedged and protected, Father. In your name I do pray. Amen.